The train slows, and you open your eyes. Outside it's dark, very dark, but the platform glows in a soft golden light, as though a quiet dream were pressing against the window pane. It's strange to see this shimmer here, in the midst of the darkness. You look at the small list in your compartment where all the stations are listed. You're traveling through a station that doesn't exist. You know this at once. The conductor told you the names of all the stations earlier, and this name wasn't among them. She said it with a certain kind of certainty, as though she knew the stations like her own fingers. But now, as the train brakes and slows, you still recognize an old board on the platform. The board is made of wood, not metal, and it's painted weakly, as though eroded every day by rain and time. The lettering is faded, but readable. They're old letters, perhaps handwritten, or made with an old printing press. The board says, Hochwald Süd. Below that is a date, also handwritten. Today's day, but 100 years ago. It's impossible, and yet it's true. It's as though the past is reaching into the present for a moment. You press your face against the glass. It's summer, can it be? But outside it's night. The platform is brightly lit, but not by electric lights. It's as though the light comes naturally from the air itself, from the warm summer evening itself. Flowers grow between the stones, little white blossoms, and they're luminous, as though they had their own brightness. The light seems to come from inside the flowers, as though each flower were a little lantern. It smells of moisture and warm stone, though the windows are closed. The scent comes from somewhere else, from another time perhaps. It comes through the air itself, as though time doesn't respect its own boundaries, as though the summer from 100 years ago were blowing directly in your face. It's the scent of youth, of hope, of longing for something you can't name. The brakes squeak softly. The train stops. No one gets in. No one gets out. You sit alone in your compartment, and the world out there seems to be waiting. The train stops longer than usual. 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It's hard to say. Time feels different here, at this place. It's as though time itself is holding its breath, would hold its breath, to not interrupt this moment. You watch the platform. Nothing moves. The lantern doesn't flicker. The white flowers keep blooming, slowly and patiently. It's as though this station exists at a different speed, in another dimension even. It's as though the summer from 100 years ago is trapped here, frozen in this one night. Then you see an old man on the platform. He wears a dark suit and a hat from another time, the clothing of a man who's been away a long time. His face is old but calm, his hair grey or white. He looks at the train, more precisely at your window, and his gaze is full of a quiet sadness that isn't frightening. It's not the sadness of pain or loss, but the sadness of something that was and is no more, the sadness of memory itself. It's the sadness of someone who remembers something beautiful, something that won't come again, but that existed, that was real, that was valuable. You don't know why, but your heart grows warm. You also don't know why, but you somehow understand that this man lives on a day that occurred only once. that this station existed on a single day in the past, and that the train you're sitting in has crossed the boundary between times, very gently, very softly, without anyone noticing. The man moves slowly, as though walking through warm honey. He looks at the locomotive, then at the carriages, then at your window. His face isn't sad, but thoughtful. It's the face of someone carrying time with him like a weight, but also like a blessing. The train moves on, very slowly. Through your window, you still see the man standing there, and as the train moves, he slowly turns his gaze to follow you, and his hand rises in a final gesture. It's as though he's waving goodbye to the train, or as though he's saying goodbye to something he couldn't hold, something he was only allowed to hold for a moment. You look back as long as possible. The man grows smaller, becomes a silhouette, becomes a shadow. But you still see his face, still the shimmer of his eyes, still the quiet dignity of his body. It's a sight that burns itself into your memory, that feels like the most important thing you've ever seen. The platform disappears, the white flowers disappear, the lantern disappears, the man disappears. Only the golden light remains for a moment, a shimmer that slowly dissolves into the darkness. The station was no dream, but it wasn't quite real either. It was something in between, something that exists only in this night, in this hour, whilst you're traveling. The train carries you on, into the future or into the present. It's unclear. The direction you're traveling is hard to determine when time is so uncertain. But you have the feeling that you've just experienced something very important. Not something exciting or wild, but something gentle and deep. You've touched a moment that's long past, and you've given the old man a silent acknowledgement, simply through your presence. You've looked into the past without changing it. You've borne witness that he existed, that this station existed, that this day was one. Your seeing has made him real, even if only for a second, even if the reality of that second lies between worlds. The night becomes black again. The other windows show only darkness. You lean back in your seat, and your thoughts become slow and languid. The station that existed for only one day disappears from your thoughts, but not from your memory. It will stay there, warm like an old photograph you once found that touched you mysteriously. You wonder whether this station really only existed for one day, or whether it only reveals itself once per 100 years when the train passes by at the right time. You wonder whether the old man stands at this station every day, or whether he only stood there today, 100 years ago. The answers have vanished along with the platform, and that's good too. Some secrets are more beautiful when you don't solve them. The train rocks you like a cradle. Your eyes close. The old man and his lonely platform, the white flowers, the lantern, the golden light, the date from 100 years ago. All of it becomes part of your dream. Time flows. The years roll past you like landscape, and you simply let yourself drift, safe in your carriage. You imagine that the man stands at this station every day, waiting for the train. Or perhaps he only stands there today, only 100 years ago, and the train only passes through this station today, 100 years ago, and in this night. It's impossible to say where truth ends and dream begins. And it's also not important. Magic doesn't need explanation. Wonder doesn't need to be explained to be valuable. You've stood face to face with the past, and the past has nodded kindly to you. It's as though time itself is telling you, all is well, all is as it should be. The man has lived, has loved, has suffered, and now he sits quietly at his platform and watches the train. And you see him, and through that you make him real, make his existence valuable, make his memory alive. That's enough. That's all you need. That's the greatest form of love there is, simply to see someone, and through that, let the universe know that he existed. Come, listen carefully. I'll tell you about a woman whose old, experienced hands know how to weave spring itself. Her name is Ludmila, and she lives in South Moravia in the Czech Republic, in a small place. And her art is ancient, reaches back centuries. Ludmila is 79 years old, and her hands are no longer as quick as they once were, not as nimble. But perhaps they've grown more precise, more mature. She has an entire workshop full of materials, full of willow, dry, peeled willow, clean and pure, and grasses, precious spring grasses she gathers herself on her long walks. On a large wooden table stand bundles of materials, dozens of bundles, sorted carefully by length, by color, by thickness. Ludmila knows all these fine differences, can feel them with her fingers. The Easter palms, the palm branches she weaves, are no mere decoration. They're ceremony, history, tradition, faith. In South Moravia, they're carried into church on Palm Sunday. They're blessed by the priest. They're taken home and hung in the rooms. A few are gifts for family, but most are sold or given to the villagers. Ludmila's palm branches from 10 years ago, from 15 years ago, still hang in the houses of her neighbors, withered but precious. In spring, when the willows begin to put out new shoots, when the first green tips break out of dark buds, when nature awakens again, that's when Ludmila's year begins. She must cut the willows at exactly the right time, not too early when they're still too hard, not too late when they've already become woody. Timing is everything. Everything depends on it. She knows it in her bones, in her body, when the right time is. It's like an instinct, a feel, a connection to nature. Her route leads from Olomouc to Brno, about 100 kilometers. But she doesn't make this journey because of the distance, not for practical reasons. She travels slowly, observing, to find the best willows, to gather the most beautiful materials. There are special, secret places, special marshes and riverbanks where the willows are particularly supple, where the light falls particularly beautifully. Her family has known these places for generations, for perhaps 100 years. The 1st of March is her sacred day, her anchor. That's when she begins to wander and observe, to look attentively. The fruit trees in South Moravian gardens begin to bloom slowly. The apple trees turn white and delicate pink. The pear trees glow. Life everywhere, awakening everywhere. She goes with her long knife in her pockets and searches for young shoots, soft enough for weaving, but already strong enough to be durable, to last a long time. In the second week of March, she begins to cut. With her long, very sharp knife, which she's had for 30 years, which she inherited from her mother, she cuts the willows to exactly the right length, again and again, the whole week. She needs long pieces for the structural base, the stable, the strong ones. Shorter, thinner ones for the decoration, for the beauty, for the details. The church bells ring loud and clear across the broad plain as she cuts, from early morning until late afternoon, and it's a soothing sound that underscores the rhythm of her work. Cut, cut, cut. Always the same rhythm, always the same patience. Then comes the peeling, an important process. She boils the willows in large copper pots with water, not for long, just long enough to soften the bark, to soften it. Then she peels the bark away with her hand and a thin knife, and the willows become bare and pale and shiny as glass. That's the true art, preparing these willows in their pure state. She gathers the grasses at the end of March, when the first truly warm days come. She goes to the meadows she's known for decades and gathers very carefully certain grasses, feather grasses, which are delicate and white, and others that are greener, have livelier color. She gathers them early in the morning when they're still damp with dew, because that makes them more supple, more flexible. Her large baskets are full when she comes home in the evening. The weaving itself is the true heart of the work, the soul of tradition. Ludmila sits in her bright workshop, where the light comes from the east and illuminates everything, gently, warmly, and her old hands, which have done this 100 times, begin to work. The willows are woven carefully, with great attention. The grasses are worked in, become part of the whole, and slowly, very slowly, hour after hour, something beautiful emerges, something worthy, something that has eternity in it. No two are the same. Each palm branch is individual, different, has its own face, its own personality, its own character. That's what's important. That's the true art. She thinks a great deal while weaving. Her thoughts wander. She thinks of the women before her, her grandmother, her mother, her great-grandmother, who did the same, who made the same almost identical work, perhaps 100 years ago, perhaps 200 years ago. She thinks of the old, strong hands that passed these special techniques to her, that literally taught her everything. Weaving is prayer for Ludmila, is meditation, is love for tradition, is history in her hands. Every palm branch is a letter to the future, a gift to the next generation. 2 weeks before Palm Sunday, she has woven about 100 beautiful individual palm branches by hand, with patience. Some she sells for little money to poor families. Some she simply gives away to the church. Her daughter and her granddaughter will carry some of them to church, will hold them proudly high at the priest's blessing. That's true continuity. That's history continuing, not breaking off. Ludmila sometimes thinks that when she's no longer here, perhaps someone else will continue this tradition. Perhaps her granddaughter will learn this art. But she doesn't know. For now, that's enough. For now, there are these 100 palm branches. On the day before Palm Sunday, she stands in the cold church and looks at the palm branches she's made herself. They're beautiful. They're worthy. their art. The priest blesses them all together, and Ludmila weeps a bit. Not from sorrow, but from the deep knowledge that she's preserved the tradition, that she's a true artist, even if the modern world might not understand that. After the blessing, the people leave the church, holding their palm branches proudly, almost reverently. Ludmila's palm branches will hang on walls, will be blessings, will be protection, will be history. Ludmila knows some of these houses. She's been inside them, has seen how her earlier palm branches hang, faded but precious, loved, respected. She sits on a bench beside the church and looks at the people. She sees her daughter with her grandchildren, all with palm branches. She sees the whole community, all with their palm branches. That's continuity, thinks Ludmila. That's true tradition, still alive, not dead. Not like so much else in this modern world. A young man approaches her. A grandson of a grandson, perhaps, or simply someone from the village. "Thank you, Ludmila," he says simply. "The palm branches are beautiful. They're as beautiful as always." Ludmila nods. She says nothing, but her eyes are moist. That's the best compliment, the best thanks she can receive. The tradition lives on. The art lives on. And the night after Palm Sunday, Ludmila falls asleep peacefully, knowing that the palm branches go into homes, that they'll bring blessings, that she's brought true beauty into the world. Her hands did that. Her old hands still brought art. And so we travelled on, the train and I and the few other passengers who sat with me in the compartment or in neighbouring ones, each in their own little corner of the world, each on their own path toward sleep. The warmth of the carriage, the quiet crackle of the heating, the clack of wheels on the rails, all of it became a single song, a song without words, a song that carries you and soothes you and says, "You may let go now. You may rest now." The train travels on for you. Time travels on for you. The world sorts itself out while you sleep. And somewhere in this dark landscape, I still thought, other people are sleeping now in their beds, in their houses, and the moon looks down on them, and the moon looks down on us, and everything is in its place. The fields are in their place, the forests are in their place, the rivers are in their place, and I am in my place, here in this carriage, here in this warm cradle of wood and fabric and metal that carries me where I need to go, without my having to be awake, without my having to do anything but trust and rest. A clink of crockery comes from the dining car, the bright sound of cups being carefully stacked. I hear it and immediately think of another train, of other times, of luxury long since past. It's 1931 in my head, and I'm traveling from Munich to Venice, and beside me sits a woman with the most elegant hands I've ever seen. And I remember quite suddenly how she drinks her tea. The train was a luxury train, a modern train with dark red velvet-covered walls and brass lamps that shone gold. The Salon Car was almost empty. It was a strange time, a time when not as many people travelled anymore, though there was still wealth. I was sitting at a window reading the newspaper when a woman entered. She was older than I was, perhaps mid-60s, and she wore a hat made of fine tulle ribbons. Her dress was simple, but it was made of a fabric you recognized at once as the finest linen. She sat opposite me, and the carriage changed. That sounds strange, but it's true. It was as though she'd occupied the air itself. She ordered tea. That was the beginning. A waiter brought a tray with English porcelain, with fine cups, very thin, and a silver teapot. She poured the tea very slowly, very carefully. She didn't simply do it quickly, but she attended to the stream of water, to the moment when the color was exactly right, not too light, not too dark. She raised the cup to her lips and drank with her eyes closed, simply still. That was all. I couldn't help but watch. After a while, she asked if I wanted tea too. I said yes. She nodded and ordered another cup. She told the waiter that this tea had to be in Assam. No other would work on this train. She said it in a voice that didn't command, but rather asked that he understand. Her name was Sophia, and she was a woman who'd traveled her whole life, not from necessity, but from inclination. She'd lived in Paris, in London, in Vienna, in Rome. She'd lived everywhere, had friends everywhere, had built a life everywhere, and then dissolved it again. She told me that traveling had taught her what was truly important in a life, what you could keep and what you had to let go. Not places, not events, not the collection of memories, no, but moments. The single, perfect moment in which you sit and drink tea and know that you're moving, that beneath your feet the train rolls, that the wheels click, that the world spins, and the space between two cities is crossed, and you yourself are somewhere in between, in this no man's land of movement. She explained that the ritual of traveling was the secret. If you traveled very fast, if you hurried, you didn't really get the place either. But if you took time, if you sat and drank a good tea and listened to the rhythm of the train, then you could understand what it meant to become a different person in a different place. She described to me how she'd lived in each of her different apartments, and as she spoke, her voice became so tender that I understood it was her pain, but also her greatness. Each apartment had a different time. The light came at different times, and people woke at different times. Each apartment had a different way of cooking, different smells, different neighbors listening to different music. In Paris, the apartment had had a particular blue, a cool blue from the Seine light. In London, it had been gray, always gray. In Rome, completely different light, a golden light that even seemed to warm sadness. But everywhere, in all these lives, she'd held to one habit, one constant. She drank her tea, always at the same time, at 4 p.m, whenever possible, always in the same way, with attention, with silence. That was the thread, the red thread that held her life together, even though she constantly moved about like a bird that knew no tree to land on. The train rolled through Italian landscape. We spoke all the while as the south came closer. She told me of London, of fogs so thick you couldn't see your hand before your face, people like ghosts on the streets. She said that in this darkness, she'd learned to trust her inner compass, that in such darkness, you can't walk with your eyes, but with your heart. She spoke of Vienna with such tenderness that I knew she'd been happy there, of the music that came from the houses, not loud music, but that gentle, ever-present music that wrapped the city like a cloth. She said that the music of a place, that the soul of a place, brought a certain quality to the tea, that the taste of a city lived in every cup. Viennese tea, with that gentle note of melancholy, tasted different from Parisian tea, which was bright and quick, from London tea, which was dark and mysterious. She asked about my life. I told her I hadn't traveled much. She nodded understandingly. She said to me that it didn't matter how much you traveled, but how present you were in what you did. She said many people went round the world and never really arrived. Other people stayed in one place and traveled with their thoughts everywhere. The clink of crockery from the other side of the carriage seemed to make her relax. She said that the sound of teapot and cup was the best music, the music of civilization, of rest, of the moment. She said if you heard that sound, you could be sure that someone, somewhere, was taking a pause, that someone was arriving at themselves. When we arrived in Venice, as the train slowed and the bridges and canals became visible, Sophia gave me a small tea tin. It was fine metalwork, Japanese, with a particular pattern, a tea house in the snow, very simply painted, very perfect. She placed it in my hands and held my hand tight. She said that the best tea was the one you drank in peace, with attention, with love. She said I could always carry this tin with me, to remind myself that traveling didn't consist of going quickly from one place to another, looking at the sights and moving on. Rather, it consisted in changing time itself, slowing down the rhythm of life, until you felt that you were truly in a new place, that you yourself had truly changed. The clink from the dining car has stopped. The train returns to its ordinary tempo, becomes routine again, becomes a machine again. I close my eyes and imagine how Sophia raised her cup, how she closed her eyes, how time stood still for a moment, just for these few seconds. I still have Sophia's tin. I never stayed long enough in one place to open it and drink the tea. I had to travel too much, had to stay on the move too much. But the tin itself is enough for me, is more than enough. It's heavy in my hands, and whenever I hold it, I feel Sophia. I feel that it's possible to hold time, that it's possible to make a moment so perfect that it lasts forever. It reminds me that a good life doesn't consist of places, doesn't consist of the sum of kilometers traveled, but of such moments, of moments when you're truly with yourself. Drink a sip of tea in your dreams and let time stand still. And somewhere in this dark landscape, I thought still, other people sleep now in their beds, in their houses, and the moon looks down on them, and the moon looks down on us, and everything is in its place. The fields are in their place, the forests are in their place, the rivers are in their place, and I am in my place, here in this carriage, here in this warm cradle of wood and cloth and metal, carrying me where I need to go, without my having to stay awake, without my having to do anything but trust and rest. A woman 2 rows ahead wears a scarf, intensely blue, almost violet at the edges. The color is so saturated it glows, even here in the dim light of the carriage. I stare at this scarf, and it pulls me back. It pulls me back to a train in 1923, when I met a woman who told me everything about the art of colors. And suddenly I remember how much she loved this work. It was the train from Bern to Lausanne early that morning. I was sitting alone until a young woman entered the compartment, perhaps 30 years old, with hands that showed as soon as she came in that here was someone who worked. Her fingers were stained, a bit of indigo under the nails, traces of saffron on the inside of her wrist, and there were the hand folds, a delicate green. She wore a cotton coat, but over her shoulder hung a bundle of cloths in various shades, red, orange, yellow, like a little rainbow collection. She sat and began to unwrap the cloths carefully, as though checking precious documents. She pulled out a scarf that had exactly the same color as the one I saw just now, that saturated blue with violet shadows, and she held it to the light. That was the moment she spoke to me. She asked if I was a woman interested in colors. I said honestly that I didn't have any particular opinion about colors. She laughed warmly. She said that was the best thing I could have said, because it meant I was ready to listen instead of defending myself, instead of saying I loved this color or that color. Her name was Elizabeth, and she was a silk dyer in a small workshop in Bern, one of the few women still practicing the old craft. Most dye works had become factories with machines and chemical dyes, but Elizabeth still worked in the old way, with hands and plants and time. She showed me the scarf more closely. She'd created this blue tone from indigo and from a specific plant, woad, an old dyer's plant that hardly anyone used anymore. She explained that modern dyers only use chemicals now, and the silk distressed her because the silk suffocated under chemical colors. A spool of silk dyed with plant colors still had life, still had breath. She could feel it. I believed her, though I didn't understand how you can feel a color. She saw my skepticism and told me of a chain of events. She'd dyed a scarf, soaked it for 4 days in a bath of madder, a root I'd never heard of. The scarf had turned red, but not like chemical red. Warm, alive, grounding. She'd given it to a friend. Later, that friend said he wanted to wear this scarf every night because the color made him calm. It was no coincidence, Elizabeth said. It was because the plant had passed its nature to the silk while dyeing. She opened her coat and showed me more cloths, a little artwork from thousands of hours. There was a delicate green from knotweed, a plant that grew in meadows. There was a deep brown from walnut shells. She collected these herself, always in autumn when the nuts fall from the tree, and dries them all summer until autumn on the floor of her workshop. A light, almost soft yellow from dyer's weld, a yellow crucifer flower, a deep orange from saffron. That was the most expensive, she said, because saffron was so rare. She described the process to me in such detail and with such passion that I could see it before me. How you gather the plants at sunrise when moisture still clings to them. How you dry them. How you store them in dark glass jars so the strength doesn't fade. How you heat water. How you add the dried plants. How you add the fine silk cloths and then wait. Simply wait. The waiting was most important for Elizabeth. She said that was the weakness of the modern world, that nobody could wait anymore. While the hours passed in the dye bath, the silk constantly changed. The color migrated into the fibers, and the whole art consisted in knowing when to take it out before the color grew too dark. Out too early, and the color wouldn't be deep enough, not true. Left in too long, and the silk could suffer, could discolor in a way that looked wrong. She was traveling to Lausanne to speak with an old dyer who knew dyeing techniques that had been almost lost in Switzerland. She was nervous, but not unhappy. She said she hoped to learn from him, that she believed he could show her how to make a dye so that it's not just technically correct, not just accurate in its measurements, but also beautiful, also soulful. She said the best dye work united science and art, that it had to be the craft of a scientist, but also the soul of an artist. We spoke during the whole journey. She told me that a color is never finished, that it changes with the age of the cloth, with the light, with the mood of the person wearing it. She said that was probably the secret, that the color had to stay alive, not frozen like in a bottle. Elizabeth had small samples that she pulled from her bag during our conversation, violet beside blue, to show me how much a color changes when you see it beside another color. Red beside orange, and suddenly the red looks deeper. Green beside yellow, and the green grows colder. She explained that all colors are relative, that this was a great truth that many people hadn't understood.
There's no absolute red, no absolute blue in nature. There's only colors in dialogue with each other. Colors that change depending on who's looking at them and what other colors are beside them.
That was a strange and deep idea for me. But the more she spoke, the more I looked at the samples she showed me, the more it made sense. She said it was probably the same in life, that you could never understand who you were alone, but only in relation to other people. That a person's identity was also relative, that you always saw and understood yourself in relation to others. When we arrived in Lausanne, as the train already pulled into the station and the roofs of the city became visible, Elizabeth gave me a small sample, a precious piece of silk that she herself had dyed in that dark blue with violet shadows I'd admired at the window. She wrapped it carefully in cloth and placed it in my hands. She said to keep it, and sometimes to hold it to the light and think of her and everything she'd told me. She said I should remember that beauty comes from patience, not from haste, that the most beautiful things need time, and that this time isn't wasted time, but is itself the treasure. The scarf of the woman in the carriage is now hidden because she's turned and arranged her pillow. The color is gone from my sight, but I know it's still there. I lean back in my seat and close my eyes. I kept Elizabeth's small sample for a long time. It's faded now, almost white in the middle. But if I hold it to the right light, at exactly the right angle, it still remembers its deep blue with violet shadows, as though breathing in the dark. Sometimes I hold it to the window of a train and look at it, and then I remember Elizabeth, her eyes that always had something distant about them, as though she were always seeing another reality that existed only in the colors. Sleep now. Think of colors breathing inside you. The train traveled through a tunnel, and for a brief moment it was completely dark outside. Just the rushing sound, just the echo of the wheels against the tunnel walls. Clack, 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 clack. And then we were outside again, and the night took us back in, like a mother taking her child back into her arms after a brief outing. I thought how beautiful that is. Tunnels and tunnels again, and night again, and always on, always on. And eventually, you stop noticing what's outside and what's inside, because everything flows together, because everything becomes one. because sleep is so near, you can already smell it. The compartment smells of old leather. An older gentleman opposite has hung his dark brown coat over the edge of the luggage rack, and the smell rises to my nose. Not unpleasant, but spicy, dry, permeated with years. I stare at the folds of the fabric, and suddenly I'm taken back, remembering a train ride after Vienna back in 1927. And I remember, quite suddenly, how she sat. It was on the night train from Vienna to Budapest. The train rolled slowly out of the Südbahn station, and the platform lights stretched away in long lines. I sat in the sleeper car, and there was still one seat free, the window seat. She came in, a woman in her middle years, wearing a hat trimmed with fine brown feathers. She removed her gloves as she sat, and I could see at once that here was someone who worked with her hands. The fingers weren't rough, no, far too elegant for roughness, but there was something deliberate in the way she moved them, as though she knew exactly what each knuckle could do. She placed a small suitcase under the window seat, and as the wall lamp illuminated her face, I saw her profile clearly. Hooked nose, determined mouth, eyes that gazed straight out into the night as the train picked up speed. We didn't speak at first. That was the way of the time. You nodded, you indicated mutual respect, and then you both simply sat. But after a while, as the train found its steady rhythm, she asked if the window was too cold for me. I said no. She said she had a terrible fear of train travel, so she always traveled with the window open. She needed to be able to smell the night, otherwise she'd get scared. That was the beginning. Her name was Marta, and she was a glove maker. Not in a large shop with display windows and price tags, but in a workshop in the inner city, where she worked with a master who knew the old techniques. She showed me her hands, explained how to sew in a lining so it remains invisible, how to bevel the leather strips with scissors so the seam isn't visible. She spoke of it as though I'd just heard wonderful music. With that reverence for craft you only find in people who understand that the right work is everything. The workshop, she told me, was small and dark, but deliberately so. The light had to be exactly right, otherwise you couldn't see the mistakes. Beside a window that looked onto a narrow Viennese street stood a long table, and there sometimes 3, sometimes 4 workers sat and sewed. She herself had the seat furthest towards the window because she did the delicate work, the thumb holes, the buttons, the refinements. The master, a man named Herr Koblicek, was about 70 years old and could sew the most complicated seam from memory without looking. She admired him more than anyone else she knew. She was traveling to Budapest to learn new techniques. A very old master there, grandfather of a colleague, was to show her how Hungarian glove makers reinforced the thumb holes, a technique perfected in Hungary that only a few in Vienna still knew. She wanted to stay 6 days. She was nervous. She was 46 years old and had never taken any major trips. The idea of visiting a city alone, of meeting a stranger whose language she didn't really speak, was a big thing for her. But the master in Vienna had said she must go, that you don't stand still if you want to be a glove maker, that the best always keep learning until the last day. In the sleeper car, she talked a lot. I think she was simply glad not to be alone. She told me about her master in Vienna, how he fetches the materials from the station, how he blesses the gloves before the workday begins, really blesses them, with a small gesture, as though they were artworks that needed consecration. She spoke of the different kinds of leather. Kid leather, so soft as air, best for the warm seasons. Calf leather, which is lighter and lasts longer. Then the more expensive cow leather for ladies with large hands, and pig leather for less wealthy women. She spoke of ladies who wore only a certain color. There was a countess who always wanted dark brown, and this countess had now been wearing the same gloves for about 15 years. Marta didn't know the woman personally, but she knew her hands, the way the fingers had changed from year to year, how painful it sometimes was to make the same work year after year for someone growing older, but always wanting the same gloves, because it was the only continuity in her life. The night was full of stations. We stopped somewhere, perhaps Pressburg, and she opened the window wide and leaned out, without showing any fear, though the wind was strong and the train still moving slowly. She breathed deeply, and I could see something in her relax. She said the night smelled of oil and iron, and that was the best smell there was, because it was the truth. It wasn't the smell of home, not the smell of soap or breadcrumb or the fabrics in the workshop, but the smell of time itself, of traveling, of moving forward through darkness. She said this smell gave her courage, that it showed her there was still a whole world outside Vienna, outside the workshop, outside the small routine of her life. In the morning, when the train was already in Hungary and the sun rose pink over the endless plains, she carefully packed away her gloves. Then she changed. A clean dress, dark blue and very classical. She pulled a red comb from her bag and combed her hair very carefully, strand by strand. She did this with the same attention she'd have given to making gloves, every movement precise. She said that a person arriving in another city must always have clean hair. It was a kind of respect for the city, for the master she'd meet, for the work she'd do. She also said that the Hungarians watched women, and she didn't want them to speak about her appearance when she spoke of her art. As she got off in Budapest, she gave me a pair of small gloves made of kid leather, black, very thin, almost transparent if you held them to the light. She said I should give them to someone I trusted, because handmade gloves always carried something of the hands of the person who made them. It wasn't a sentimental idea, she said, but it was truly so. The way one sewed, the tension in the thread, the force you used, all of that flowed into the gloves. If someone wore these gloves, they'd wear not just Marta, but also something of Marta's way of seeing the world. The gloves were so small and perfect that I didn't want to touch them, as though they were still alive. The window here is now closed. The old gentleman opposite switches his coat to the other seat, and the movement releases that smell again. Old leather, oil, and years. The train travels into dusk, and I breathe deeply once more, but the scent has already faded, dissolved by the modern air and the many hours that have passed. I kept the black gloves for a long time. They're now too delicate for real hands, and I never gave them to anyone, though Marta wanted me to. They lie now in a drawer, wrapped very carefully in paper, and I open them sometimes to look at them and remember how important small work can be when you do it with your whole heart. And sleep now. Trust in the rhythm of the train. The night is so dark that you can't tell whether your eyes are open or closed. The train travels through a darkness so complete that it feels like an embrace, like a womb of shadow. It's a darkness without fear, a darkness that contains only gentleness. The wheels of the train make their steady sound, a soothing song that rocks you towards sleep. Then you see it, a delicate shimmer on the windowsill, a glow that comes from within. It's so subtle at first that you wonder if you're just imagining it. But no, the light is really there. It grows slowly, becomes ever clearer, until you can see clearly that something is blooming on the windowsill. They're flowers. Small, strange flowers you've never seen before. They're white, but not just white. They glow from within, as though in each flower a tiny lamp is burning, a tiny sun born to exist only for this night. They've just burst forth from nothing, or perhaps they've always been there and you've simply never noticed because you weren't paying attention. You're not surprised. It's strange, but you don't ask yourself how it's possible. It's midnight. It's winter, perhaps. Outside it's cold, and the landscape is probably white with frost or snow, or it's green with an evergreen dream. But on the windowsill, flowers are growing, and they're blooming without earth or water, without there being any sun. Carefully, you lean forward to see the flowers better. They're delicate as paper, and the leaves are gossamer thin, so thin you can see through them. The color is almost transparent, and the inner glow seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It smells wonderful, like something between jasmine and dream, between honey and starlight, like something that doesn't exist, but does. You wonder why these flowers only bloom at night. Perhaps they don't need the sun. Perhaps they feed on the silence of the night, on the solitude of the train, on the tiredness and gentleness of sleeping travelers. Perhaps they're born from the dreams of those who travel at night, from the hopes placed in the darkness, from the longing to arrive, from the longing for rest. They're flowers of vulnerability, of softness, of intimacy. They need the darkness to exist, and without it, they'd wither under the pitiless sun. One flower opens still wider as you watch. It's as though greeting you, as though knowing you're there. The petals unfold slowly, very slowly, almost imperceptibly. And in their center, you see something golden, something that looks like a tiny sun, like a star that's grown from the flower. You reach out and touch the flower very gently with your finger, barely more than a breath, and it vibrates with joy or pleasure. Your touch is a gift to it. It thanks you with a delicate tremor, with a shimmer of light that grows more intense. It's as though the flower knows you, as though it's been waiting for your finger, as though your touch is the only reason it exists. The flower and you are connected in this moment, through this tiny contact, and nothing will change that. Other flowers begin to open. They respond to the first flower you touched. It's as though your touch sent a message through all the flowers, a message of warmth, of attention, of love. Soon there are dozens, perhaps hundreds, everywhere on the windowsill. The whole windowsill is covered with these strange, glowing blossoms. They open like a chorus stretching out, or like a poem slowly beginning to speak. The blossoms open in waves, one after another, like the sea breathing. It's wonderful to witness, and it gives you the feeling that you're participating in something very intimate and very sacred, in a ceremony that can only take place at night. You look at the flowers, and the flowers look at you. It's a mutual recognition between you and life itself. You sit back on your seat and look at the flowers. They don't grow larger, don't multiply. They're simply there, in their perfect state, and they bloom for you, only for you, only for this night, only for this hour. You know that as soon as the first sunlight falls through the window in the morning, they'll disappear. They belong to the night, and when the night ends, so do they. They'll return to the place they came from, to the realm of night. It's beautiful and sad at once that something so precious is so fleeting. But perhaps it's the fleetingness that makes it precious. That's all right. It doesn't make them any less wonderful. It makes them more precious, even. It gives you a secret that you share with the night, something that people traveling by day will never see. It's a privilege, an honor, a kind of blessing. You've been chosen, not because you're better, not because you're more worthy, but because you travel at night, because you trust the darkness, because you're willing to be open to wonders, because your heart is still young enough to believe in magic. The flowers continue to glow. Their gentle light helps you fall asleep without your eyes needing to look away. Your eyes grow heavy and warm. The blossoms blur in your sight, become lights, become stars, become nothing and everything at once. They show you that the night isn't dark when you know where to look. They show you that magic exists. They show you that you're worthy of seeing this magic. The train carries you on through the night, and the flowers keep blooming, and it's exactly as it should be. It's as though the train and the flowers and you are all playing one great song together, a song that can only be sung at night, a song without words, a song of light and movement and silence. The silence grows deeper. The rhythm of the wheels grows louder and simultaneously quieter. It's as though the whole world slowly dissolves and only this one windowsill with its glowing flowers remains. And that's enough. That's more than enough. That's all you need to know that magic exists, and that you're experiencing it right now. The magic is real. It's not trapped in storybooks. It lives here, on this night train, in these flowers, in this moment, in your heart. The flowers seem to send you a message, not with words, but with light. The message is, you may sleep. It's safe. You will be watched. These flowers that bloom only at night are guardians of the night. They're here to protect you while you sleep, to show you that darkness isn't frightening, but beautiful, a place full of secret splendor. You thank the flowers in your heart. You thank the train that carries you. You thank the night that wraps around you. And the flowers answer with even more intense light. Your eyes close. You still see the flowers. but with your eyes closed, in your memory, in your dream. They're no less real in your dream. They glow there too, in this inner night. And when you wake in the morning, the flowers won't be there anymore. But you'll know they were real, because your heart tells you so. Because the air still smells of jasmine. Because you've been changed by this encounter with something that can only bloom on a night train. The scent of the flowers grows fainter, or perhaps your nose grows less sensitive as you drift into sleep. It doesn't matter. You carry the scent now inside you, in your soul, in your dreams. The night train carries you on through the darkness, and the flowers follow you, illuminating your path, until you're completely and totally asleep, until you become the night itself, until the boundaries between you and the universe blur in gentle darkness and glowing dreams. It's well past midnight, and your thoughts are heavy as lead, pleasantly heavy. The train rocks you in a rhythm that seems older than time itself. Then you hear a footstep in the corridor, slow and deliberate, as though someone were walking very carefully, so as not to disturb. An old man steps into your compartment. He wears a long, dark coat and a hat that speaks of many journeys. His eyes are mild and calm, eyes that have seen much and forgotten nothing. In one hand, he carries a small suitcase made of dark wood, as old as he is himself, perhaps older. His other hand is supported by a walking stick, whose handle seems to be made of ivory, though it might simply be old bone, polished smooth by years. The man says nothing. He nods to you, kindly but seriously, and sits on the seat opposite. He places the suitcase carefully beside him, gently, as though he were guarding something precious, something that mustn't be burdened too heavily. You don't ask yourself if he'll speak with you. It seems clear he won't. The silence that emanates from this man is not an absence of sound. It's something positive, something real, something you can begin to feel, like a physical force. The man looks at you, and his gaze is wise and patient. It's a gaze that withstands time. It's a gaze that says, I know why you're here. I know you're tired. I know you need rest. He breathes slowly and deeply, and it's as though your breath adapts to his. It begins slowly. First, you notice your thoughts growing calmer. The worries of the day, the small fears, the restlessness that always lurks in you, they all dissolve like sugar in warm water. The small stress in your neck, the dull ache in your shoulders, the slight tension in your jaw, all of it grows softer, looser, weaker. It's not as though the old man is telling you something or giving you something alchemical. It's as though the suitcase is sharing its quality, as though it's sending its essence into the air of the compartment. It's like sitting near an old tree, a tree that's hundreds of years old, and the quiet strength of the tree flows into you, just through being near it, just through being together. From this old, dark suitcase lying so unassuming beside him on the seat, a kind of silence seems to flow out. It's not the silence of sleepers or the silence of emptiness. It's a living silence, a silence full of meaning, full of understanding, a silence that breathes, that's alive, that moves like water, a silence that says, it's all right to simply be now. It's all right not to think. It's all right not to know. It's all right to lay down your burden for a while. The silence is worn like a blanket. The silence is gentle like a song. The silence is old like time itself. The suitcase is only a container, but the container is filled with something bigger than itself. It's filled with everything that was ever silent, filled with everything that ever rested. The suitcase doesn't open. The man doesn't touch it. He simply sits there, silent and patient, and full of a kind of love that doesn't need words, and lets his silence flow into the space like a spring that flows forever, never runs dry. The silence fills the whole compartment. It fills your lungs, not as suffocation, but as deep, healing breath. It fills your head with a feeling of lightness, with a feeling of weightlessness, of freedom. It fills the spaces between your thoughts until no thoughts have any shape anymore, until everything flows like water, until everything dissolves like snow in the spring sun. You notice your eyes are closing, not because you're becoming tired in the normal sense, but because the silence allows you to rest. The silence lifts a burden from you that you hadn't even realized you were carrying. This silence tells you that no one is watching you, that no one is expecting anything, that you don't have to prove anything. You're allowed to simply be. It's enough that you exist. It's enough that you breathe. It's enough that you sit here beside this man in this library of silence. The old man and you sit across from each other in this silence, and it's not uncomfortable. It's the most familiar thing there is. It's as though you've known this person your whole life. It's as though the souls recognize each other before the bodies meet. You think that perhaps this man travels his whole life with this suitcase, with this silence, and sits wherever people need rest. That he's a kind of silent guardian, a companion for the nights, a bringer of peace and healing. You wonder if there are many people who've carried this suitcase, whether it's an old tradition, or whether this man is unique. It doesn't matter. What counts is that he's here, now, for you. The silence grows deeper. Not louder, not more present, but deeper. It pulls you down like gentle hands laying you in your bed. The sound of the train's wheels on the rails becomes part of this silence, a heartbeat of the train itself. The breath of the wind against the window becomes part of this silence. Everything becomes a quiet song that doesn't need words, that only needs to be. You notice your thoughts grow still. The inner voice that normally always speaks, always has something to say, falls silent. It's not as though it's forced into silence. It's more as though it naturally grows quieter until it's completely stopped speaking. And in this silence, there's room for something else. Room for being, for existence, for the truth that you're here, that you're breathing, that's enough. The man still sits there. Perhaps he sits there forever. Perhaps he sits there only for a second. Time means nothing in this silence that exists outside time. There's only the present moment, and in this moment, you sit together with him and his suitcase full of silence. You wonder who this man is, where he comes from, where he's going. But the questions aren't important. The questions are part of the world that has noise, that has words, that has restlessness. In this silence, there's only being. The man is. You are. The suitcase is. And that's enough. That's more than enough. That's everything. At some point, you notice the man has stood up. The suitcase is in his hand. He looks at you, and his gaze is full of kindness, full of the knowledge that you'll sleep well, that you'll sleep without nightmares. He leaves the compartment so quietly that you don't even hear the door close. Or perhaps you do hear it, but it's part of the silence that remains. The silence stays. It becomes part of you now. It lives in you until you wake, and perhaps beyond, forever even. It will live in your dreams. It will live in your heartbeat. It will become part of the fabric of your being, will change you for the rest of your life, will give you strength in moments of despair, will comfort you in your loneliness. The night grows warm around you, like an arm, like a scarf, like the embrace of someone who loves you. Your head sinks into the pillow. Your limbs grow heavy and relaxed. All tension falls from you like a coat you no longer need. The silence carries you further, carries you away into deeper nights, carries you into a sleep so deep and so peaceful that it almost feels like home. The suitcase and the man are gone, departed, but his gift remains, his healing, silent, perfect gift of silence that wraps around you like the softest blanket. And the landscape outside grew softer. The outlines of the trees dissolved. The fields became dark surfaces over which the moon occasionally glided its pale light. I felt my breath growing slower, my heart growing slower, my whole body sinking down into the warm embrace of the seat cushion, into the warm embrace of this train carrying me without my having to do anything for it. It was a good feeling, a rare feeling, to be carried without effort, simply to trust that the wheels keep rolling, that the rails keep leading on, that morning would come sometime. You wake because your gaze falls on something unusual. In the luggage rack above the seat opposite lies an old map, rolled up and bound with a faded silk ribbon. You wonder how long it's been there. You wonder whether it was there before or whether it's just appeared, materialized from moonlight. You stand up carefully so as not to stumble and pull the map down. It's light, lighter than you expected, and the paper is thick and precious, like something much older than it appears. The map feels alive in your hands. You wonder where it came from, who drew it, who brought it to you. But the answers don't matter. What matters is that it's here, in your hands, in this night. As you untie the silk ribbon and unfold the map, you see old lines and faded names of cities that perhaps exist or existed. The inks are brown and sepia, like old memories. There are also red lines marking the most important roads and green lines showing rivers and forests. But the red and green lines are faded, less clear. The black lines are new, dark, alive. But then something marvelous happens. As you look at the map, as the train carries you and the night wraps everything except this little light, the lines begin to change. It's impossible, but it happens anyway. Not quickly, not dramatically, but very gently, like breathing, like the most natural process in the world. A new line draws itself in, with fine black ink that seems to come from the paper itself, as though the map itself were breathing, as though the map had its own breath, its own life. It follows a curve that mirrors the current railway route you're traveling on. It's as though the map is connected to the train, as though it feels the train's pulse, as though it's traveling with you, documenting every centimeter of your journey. The cities on the map change too. Not their names, but their positions shift imperceptibly, subtly. They move closer to the line the train is just drawing. It's as though the map is updating itself, not through human hand, but through the train's movement itself. It's as though the map has a heart that beats in time with the train, that breathes with the train. You place the map on your lap and look outside. The landscape outside is black and still, but you imagine what it looks like on the map. You imagine the map seeing exactly what you see, only from a different perspective, from a higher view, as if a bird were flying over the land. That it shows itself where the train is right now, what rivers are nearby, what invisible borders you're just crossing, what villages sleep under the moon. It's a thought that gives you great calm and peace. The map sees you. The map follows your movements. The map is interested in you, in its quiet, gentle way. You're not lost. You're not alone. You're exactly where you should be. And the map documents it, values it, sees you. A new city appears on the map. You recognize the name, though you've never seen it before. It's a city you'll reach soon, in an hour or two perhaps. The ink is still wet, still dark, still fresh and alive. You stretch out your hand and wipe it gently away, just for fun, just for play. But the ink doesn't disappear. It's already burned into the paper, already impressed into the map itself. It's as though the ink won't let you erase it, as though the city already exists, no matter whether you rub it away or not. The future is already written on this map. You watch, fascinated, as more details manifest on the map. Little houses around the city become visible. Forests draw themselves in with fine green lines. A river that flows parallel to your train suddenly appears in blue. It's as though the map isn't just showing the present, but revealing the entire reality around you. The map shows you not only where you are, it also shows where you've been. The lines the train drew earlier are now old and faded. Lines that are already history, already past. They're drawn in warm brown, like old memories, like something already gone into the past. New lines are constantly forming at its front, where the journey is still unwritten, still full of possibilities. It's as though the map stands between past and future, and you yourself stand with it at this border. You slowly understand that this map is your life. Every line is a moment you've lived or will live. Every city is a turning point, a place where something important happened or will happen. The past can no longer be changed, but it's here on the map, recorded forever. Forever beautiful. You roll the map up again and lay it back in the luggage rack. The silk ribbon ties itself almost of its own accord, with a care that doesn't seem human. As you sink back into your seat, you have the feeling that the map is still drawing, that it's recording every curve the train makes, that it documents every minute of your journey, completely automatically, completely naturally, the way the heart beats without thinking. The night grows ever blacker. The windows show only your own reflection now, blurred and ghostly, an echo of you in the darkness. Your reflection looks tired, but peaceful. Your reflection smiles a quiet smile that you can't consciously make, but that's there anyway. You close your eyes and imagine how the ink flows, how the lines draw themselves, how your path writes itself. It's as though the map is recording your fate, or not recording, but revealing it. The map doesn't show what will happen, only what's happening right now, at this moment. The future isn't yet visible on the map, because it hasn't been reached yet. The map carries it all with it, all the routes, all the journeys, all the paths the train will ever take. It's heavy with history, but light in weight. It's old, but still young, still learning, still growing. You don't ask yourself who placed the map there. You don't ask yourself how it manages to update itself, how it lives and breathes. It's simply there, like the train, like the night, like the breath fogging the window. It's part of this world, this other gentle world that only exists during night journeys. Perhaps the map has always lain there, waiting for each traveler ready to see it. Perhaps it's there for all people, but only few notice it. Only few are awake enough for such wonders. Your thoughts grow slow. The lines of the map blend with your dreams. You see rivers flowing, mountains gently breathing, cities sleeping. You see your own life on the map too, all the curves you've taken, all the stops you've made. The past is drawn in brown tones, the present in black, and the future still seems white, still unwritten, full of possibilities. It comforts you to know that everything is recorded, that nothing is lost, that your life, even when it sometimes seems meaningless, is recorded on this map as an important part of the whole story. You're a line on the map, but you're a line that exists, that's real, that means you were here. And the train, always the train, draws its path further on, while you slip into sleep, accompanied by invisible lines and quiet ink that documents your life as it's still being lived. The map won't lose sight of you. It will accompany you to the end, and perhaps even beyond, long after your body has turned to dust. My eyes grew heavy, so very heavy, as though someone had gently laid a warm hand across my eyelids and said, "Now it's good." Now it's enough for today. And I heard the train clack, 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 clack. And I heard the quiet breathing of another passenger already asleep. And I heard the distant rush of wind against the window panes. And all these sounds were like a soft blanket laid over me, layer upon layer, warmth upon warmth, until I felt nothing but the smooth glide of the train through the night. It's late at night, and the train carries you through a darkness that feels gentle and protective, as though it's taking you into its arms. You've been able to sleep for a long time, but some inner urge, some quiet calling has woken you, and you don't know why. You wake because the conductor has gently touched you. She tells you that there's only one carriage behind yours, the last one, and this carriage is something quite special. Wouldn't you like to look at the back? The train will run for at least 2 more hours, and perhaps you'll find there what you need right now. She smiles, and in her smile is a secret she can't tell you, only show you. You rise slowly, tiredness hanging on you like a warm coat. The corridor is long and wonderfully quiet. Your footsteps on the floor of the train are soft, almost inaudible. Through the windows, you occasionally see lights passing by, little houses sleeping. Some houses are brightly lit, and you wonder if the people inside are awake, or whether it's simply night lights for lost wanderers. Then a door opens, and you step through. The last carriage is a library. Not large, but perfect. The shelves reach from floor to ceiling, and everywhere warm lamplight shimmers, seeming to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. It smells of old paper and something you can't name, but which immediately soothes you. It smells of safety. It smells like home, though you've never seen this place before. An elderly woman in a dark dress sits at a small table. She's reading, but she looks up as you come in, and her eyes are full of kindness. She nods to you, as though she's been expecting you. You feel she's been sitting here for hours waiting for you, or perhaps only seconds. It's hard to say. You go to the shelves. It's strange. You don't know how it happens, but your hand reaches for a book without thinking about it. Your fingers already know which one it should be. It's as though your fingers speak another language, the language of things that are needed. The book has a green linen binding, and the title page is faded, almost illegible. The letters are golden and shimmer in the light. The book is heavy, but not unpleasantly so. It's the weight of many pages, many words, many stories that generations of people have read. As you open the book, you recognize. The first story on the first page is one you've long forgotten. It's about you, about a moment in your life that gave you strength at a time when you needed it. You see your face in the story, but younger, full of hope. You see the situation that nearly destroyed you then, and you see how you managed to get through, how you grew stronger, how the pain transformed into wisdom. You sit down and read. Each page tells you something you need to hear. Not something you're missing, but something that consoles you, that gently reminds you that you've already endured so much, that you're stronger than you sometimes think. The words are old, ancient perhaps, but they're written for you. You know that somehow. It's as though someone placed this book here especially for this night, only for you, only for this moment. The letters seem to glow when you look at them. It's as though the ink isn't on the paper, but in it, a part of the paper itself. The light from the lamp seems unnecessary because the book gives off its own light. You read faster than normal, but you also forget faster than normal. It's as though the text flows into your heart rather than your memory. The stories are alive, and they speak not to your mind, but to the deepest layer of your soul. It's as though the book knows you, as though it knows exactly who you are and what you need. The old woman stands and brings you a cup of tea. The tea is warm and tastes of apple and honey, and something even more delicate that you can't name. Perhaps memory, or perhaps dream, or perhaps comfort itself. She doesn't speak much, but her smile says everything that matters. She sits beside you and looks with you at the shelves, at all these books waiting for their readers. She only says quietly, "The train will soon stop at a station where you'll get off, and you'll never see this carriage again. But that's all right. The books give you what you need right now, and then they move on to someone else who needs them too. It's like a baton that gets passed from hand to hand, always reaching the right person at the right time. Every book has a destiny. Every book waits for its reader. And when the reader finds the book, it's as though the universe comes together in perfect harmony." You don't ask her how it's possible. You don't ask why this library exists. Some things don't need to be explained. They're simply there, and that's enough. Explanation might destroy the magic, might turn it into science, might kill the beauty. And you want to preserve this magic. You want to preserve this moment, this rare grace, without analyzing or rationalizing it. It's enough to experience it. It's enough to enjoy it. Your eyes grow heavier and heavier. The book slowly slips into your lap. The tea grows cold in your hands, but you don't mind. Outside, the train travels through small valleys and over bridges, and the library rocks you ever so gently, as though it were itself a living being with only one wish: to carry you into sleep. It's strange how the library moves. It sways with the train, but not uneasily. Its movement is like breathing, like the gentle rise and fall of a sleeping chest. The books in the shelves don't seem to make any noise, though they shift a little. It's as though the library has learned to be quiet over 100 years or more. You wonder what other books are still here, on what shelves. Is there a book for everyone who's ever entered this carriage? Are there books for people not yet born, for travelers who'll come 100 years from now? It's a beautiful thought. It comforts you to think that a book awaits everyone. You dimly remember putting the book back on the shelf, but perhaps that too is only a dream, that you do it. The old woman is still there, or she's gone. It's hard to tell. She covers you with something soft, something that seems to be made of moonlight. The train continues on, and the library becomes a cradle. The words of the books follow you into dreams full of meaning, dreams that bring you gently back to yourself. The shelves around you blur in your sight. You still see the golden spines of the books, still the gentle lighting, still the peaceful figure of the old woman, who now sits down again and continues reading, as though the whole world, except this moment, doesn't exist. She reads for you, you imagine. She reads the night, so you don't have to. When you wake in the morning, you're sitting in your own compartment again, and through your window you already see the first lights of a city. It was a dream, perhaps, or it was real. But your heart feels light, much lighter than before, and that's all that matters. In your bag, though you don't know how, lies a small bookmark made of faded silk. It smells of library. You pull it out and look at it. It has no words, no label, just the soft color, the color of years and love. You lay it carefully in your notebook, and it will stay there for you. Proof that you didn't dream it all. Proof that this night was real. The train rolled gently on, and outside, the world was now completely dark. Just a few lights in the distance, single windows where other people too were settling to rest. I thought about how many people at this moment in the world were falling asleep, each in their bed, in their compartment, in their room, and how we were all part of a great, quiet movement, a movement into sleep. The rhythm of the wheels on the rails, clack, 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 was like the breathing of some great, friendly creature carrying us all together through the darkness, through time. The train leaves Lucerne on this cool morning, and I sit by the window, as always, hand on the frame, eyes already on the mountains. The air smells of damp stone and oil. But then, on the platform, while we roll slowly out, still in that first moment of departure, when the train is just gliding from the station, I see them. I notice them at once, not because they're young or especially beautiful, but because they seem so present, so there, as though they were taking root in that grey concrete. They belong to this place, or perhaps this place belongs to them. They stand quite still. The man in a dark coat, the woman beside him, her hand resting lightly on his elbow. They are old, very old, not frail, no, but old, the way people are old when they've been together a long time. Their clothes are neat, not elegant, but cared for. The man has white hair under his cap. The woman wears gray, her hair beneath a light blue hat. They might have stepped out of another time, a time when people knew how to wait. The train slides further, and I can't look away. The man wears a scarf, a wool scarf, grey like the platforms, and the woman, she extends her hand, very slowly, with the care of someone who knows time is precious, and adjusts it gently, pulls it a little to make it sit better. Light falls on her face. She doesn't smile, but her face has that kind of peace that only comes when you know who stands beside you, when you know that with absolute certainty. The scarf sits better now. She takes a step back to regard her work, this small act of care, then touches his shoulder gently, lets her hand rest there for a moment. The distance grows. 10 meters, 20, 30. I lean my forehead against the window, don't want to let these two out of my sight, even if it means ignoring my own reflection that shows itself between them and me. The man has turned his face toward her, not to speak, only to be, to stand beside her, to see her. His other hand holds her arm a little tighter, and I see he makes a small movement in it, perhaps unconscious, like a caress no outsider should notice. But I'm here, at this window. I'm a witness to this silence. I think, and this is only a guess, a story I tell myself at the window as the train pulls away from them, that they've perhaps been together 60 years, perhaps more, perhaps since the war, perhaps before, perhaps since their youth. They don't have much left to say, these two. That's the kind of love that doesn't need to explain anymore, that doesn't need words anymore, because everything's already been said in 60 years. The scarf sits well now. Her hand falls again. His pressure on her arm stays the same, neither tighter nor looser, perfectly balanced by 60 years of habit. The platform grows smaller. They wait. For what? Perhaps for the next train coming. Perhaps for a child coming. Perhaps for a grandchild picking them up. I don't know, and it doesn't matter either. What I see is enough. Two people who might add up to 100 years together, 100 or more, whole lives, and still know how to care for each other. The man shifting his weight slightly toward her without noticing. So natural it's become. And she, who feels it, accepts it, bears it, without complaint, without drama. It's as simple as breathing for them. Now they're only dots, bright dots on the dark platform. The woman in her lighter jacket, the man dark. They stay still, unmoved, while the world leaves them. Or no, while I leave them, while this train separates me from them. I can no longer see their faces, only their silhouettes growing smaller. I'm losing them, slowly. The distance grows. And then, not even that, only the memory of them, settling like roots in my mind. And I think, not sadly, but gratefully, very gratefully, I think that such images exist, that you can sit at a window and suddenly see reality, see what's true. Not the grand love from stories, not the words, not the drama or the words meant to explain love. Only this. A scarf adjusted because it was askew. A hand holding firm without thinking. A face turning toward the other, simply to check that all is well, that the other is still there, that everything's all right, that life is okay. They're gone now. The train moves faster. The mountains are bigger, closer. And I sit here with this image I'll never forget. Two people on a platform, doing nothing but waiting together. Their peace has reached me. Their way of simply being there, not dramatic, not complaining, simply present, together. That is enough. The window is just a window again, a transparent thing showing the world. The platform is past, already on the other side of the mountains. The two are gone, entered into my memory. The silence they carried with them has settled in me like sediment. But the feeling remains, this gentle, secure feeling that such people exist, that it's possible to live together this long without needing to speak, that adjusting a scarf says everything that needs saying, that a hand that holds is enough, is everything, that love lives in such gestures, not in words. The train travels from Bamberg to Schweinfurt, and beside you sits an old woman with binoculars and a green notebook full of measurements. Her name is Lieselotte, and she observes beech buds. Not because she's romantic, but because she's a phonologist. Phonology, she explains to you, is the science of nature's rhythms. When do the crocuses bloom? When does the beech break out? When do the swallows return? This data, Lieselotte says, is like the pulse of the earth, and this pulse changes every year. Climate change writes its diary in the beech buds. You ask how long she's been observing. She laughs quietly. 50 years, she says. 50 springs with the same beech trees, the same forest slopes, the same measurements. And in all those years, I've learned that nature isn't random. It has an inner logic, an inner time, and if you listen long enough, you understand what it's saying. Lieselotte opens her notebook. It's filled with data, observations, tiny sketches. Here, she says, here's the year 1974. The beeches budded on the 24th of May. And here, 1975, on the 27th of May. And here, 2005, on the 14th of April. Do you see, she says, the beeches come earlier every year. 50 years ago, they needed until the end of May. Now it's already mid-April. This isn't fantasy, it's fact. The earth is warming, and the beeches know it. The train rolls through the Steigerwald, and though you can't see the beech buds through Lieselotte's eyes, you begin to see them differently. They're not simply brown knots on the branches. They're messages. They're little sacks with an entire summer inside them, ready to open when the temperature is right. Lieselotte shows you a bud through her binoculars. It's still firmly closed, but under the brown casing you can see hints of something, lighter green, getting ready. The woodpeckers are active everywhere again. You hear their calls through the damp forests. Lieselotte says that the woodpeckers are also a sign that nature is waking. They peck into the trees, searching for insects just emerging from winter sleep. And in a few weeks, the woodpeckers will start nesting, hacking holes in trees for their nests. It's a great drama, Lieselotte says, that repeats every year. And the beech buds are like the overture to this drama. They're the signal that the concert is about to begin. Lieselotte opens her notebook further and shows you a tiny sketch. It's the silhouette of a beech, with measurements, with arrows, with notes. These drawings, Lieselotte says, are my dialogue with the tree. I draw not to be artistic, but to understand. Every line is a question. Every measurement is an answer. And over the years, a picture emerges of a life that isn't mine, but which I share. Lieselotte tells you of a beech she's observed for 40 years. It stands on a hillside south of Bamberg, and every spring, Lieselotte makes a pilgrimage to this beech. She has a name, Lieselotte says. I call her Matilda, and Matilda has taught me much about time and patience. The first year I met Mathilde was a cold spring, Lieselotte says. She waited until the 8th of June to open her buds. All the other beeches roundabout were already green, but Mathilde waited. It was like she was saying, I trust no warm day in April. I've seen too many false springs. And you know what? Lieselotte says. Mathilde was right. A week after the 8th of June came a frost, and all the beeches that had budded early lost their new leaves. But Mathilde was safe. You feel your eyes growing heavier as Lieselotte speaks. Her voice is like the rhythm of the seasons itself, slow and relentless. Mathilde is now 40 years old, and Lieselotte has grown old with her. They know each other, Lieselotte says. I know how Mathilde thinks. I know what she'll do this year, even before the spring sun comes. The damp earth of the Steigerwald smells of decay and new life. The streams are swollen with meltwater, and everywhere the water runs, you see the first tender green of wood anemones. The ants are everywhere active again, black workers hurrying over the damp earth. And everywhere, the beech buds, firmly closed, ready to wait until the right time comes. Lieselotte says that in a week she'll be back here with her binoculars and her green notebook. She'll visit Mathilde and measure how far the buds have opened. She'll take photographs, note measurements, check the temperature. And when it's time, when Mathilde is ready, she'll burst open. The most tender, brightest green will spring from the buds, and spring will once again have proven that it arrives on time. But sometimes, Lieselotte says, she wonders if Mathilde knows her too. Whether the tree knows that every year this old woman comes and watches her. Whether the beech somehow feels that she's being watched, that her story is being written down. And Lieselotte hopes so. That Mathilde and she have a quiet friendship, where no words are needed, only mutual understanding. Lieselotte speaks still of her greatest dream. She wants to create an archive, a great archive with 1,000 years of observation data from her and all the other phenologists working in these forests. That way, posterity could see how nature has changed, how the beeches respond, how the rhythms shift. This isn't just science, Lieselotte says. It's a testament, a letter to the future. We paid attention. We measured. We understood that the earth has a pulse. The train slows still more. The forests grow even denser, and everywhere lights from houses, people sleeping or waking. Lieselotte says that later, in a couple of hours, when the sun rises, she'll be out there again, with her binoculars, with her notebook, searching for Mathilde, the beech she knows like a friend. And when the buds open, Lieselotte will see it. She'll measure it, she'll write it down, and that will be one more entry in the great book of time. You begin to dream, even while Lieselotte still speaks. You dream of beech forests growing over decades, of buds carrying secrets, of an old woman with binoculars writing the history of the earth in tiny measurements. It's a beautiful dream, a soothing dream. You dream too that you yourself in your life will learn to understand time, that you'll know when it's time to wait and when it's time to act, that the rhythms of nature are also your rhythms. The train approaches Schweinfurt. Lieselotte slowly puts away her notebook, but not before turning to a fresh page. She writes the date, the time, her observations. She writes, "Train from Bamberg to Schweinfurt, 10th of April 2026, 4:47 in the morning. First woodpecker heard. Streams full of meltwater. The beaches are still, but ready. It's almost time." Lieselotte says that she repeats the same process every day. A kind of ritual, a prayer to nature. In 50 years, she may not be here anymore, but her notebook will still be. And someone else, perhaps, will read it and understand that nature tells a story, a long, slow story that shouldn't be forgotten. That every single entry is proof that the earth breathes, that time flows, that nothing stands still except in memory. Sleep now. The beech buds watch over your sleep. Mathilde will break open for you, slowly, patiently, and the most tender green light will fill your dreams. Lieselotte watches you from outside with her binoculars and writes your dreams in her green notebook. And somewhere in this dark landscape, I thought still, other people sleep now in their beds, in their houses, and the moon looks down on them, and the moon looks down on us, and everything is in its place. The fields are in their place, the forests are in their place, the rivers are in their place, and I am in my place, here in this carriage, here in this warm cradle of wood and cloth and metal, carrying me where I need to go, without my having to stay awake, without my having to do anything but trust and rest. And the landscape outside grew softer. The outlines of the trees dissolved. The fields became dark surfaces over which the moon occasionally glided its pale light. I felt my breath growing slower, my heart growing slower, my whole body sinking down into the warm embrace of the seat cushion, into the warm embrace of this train carrying me without my having to do anything for it. It was a good feeling, a rare feeling, to be carried without effort, simply to trust that the wheels keep rolling, that the rails keep leading on, that morning would come sometime.